Our presenter today is the esteemed Professor Joseph Mensah of the Faculty of Environmental and Urban Change at York University. He's the author of Black Canadians, History, Experiences, Social Conditions, and co-author with Chris Williams of Boomerang Ethics, How Racism Affects Us All. Professor Mensah is a prolific scholar, presently focusing on critical development theory, transnational migration, and research methods. He has received several competitive grants from the likes of the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, the Gates Foundation, the Global Development Network, International Labour Organization, and the International Development Research Council of Canada. From these experiences and expertise, and from his commitment to building community and the quest for social justice, he has generously distilled for us this workshop on the fundamentals of grant writing. Thank you, Professor Mensah. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and to the team at the Resource Center for Public Sociology, in particular, my good friends, Sylvia Bauer is also on the platform. In order not to waste time, I will zip right into my presentation so that we can have time for to engage in Q&A. Okay, now let me just move this properly here. My outline is going to be something like this. First, how you sort of prepare yourself. How do you prepare yourself in preparation for the grant? Understanding the call itself. Excuse me, Canada, a lot of code here. The call for proposal itself. How do you break it down? And then the main aspect of the presentation, the proposal writing process. After that, I'll give you some insight into how the proposal at the other end is evaluated. And then I'll give you some funding sources. I know this is a global presentation, but I will concentrate on Ontario and Toronto and maybe give some global hints here and there. Okay, so that is the outline. First, let's look at how you prepare. And my target, the main target, is really NGOs, civil society organizations, church organizations trying to look for funding. I don't have to tell you, with neoliberalism, governments are pulling out of supporting the civil society. So everybody is trying to look out for funding. So grant writing is very, very, very important. First and foremost, I will say that try to ensure that your NGO is registered, formally registered. In the Canadian context, that is to say that you register yourself, you have your charitable number, what you call tax number. No matter what you do, if somebody is going to give you money, for the most part, they will need tax receipt. To authenticate it, they can also apply for tax deduction here and there. So that is very important. Okay, get your charitable number. If you are registering, try to identify some very good board of directors, people who are reputable in your community. Try to talk to them if they can join your board of directors. They may not be able to come to all meetings, but at least their name as part of your team is very important. Give a strong vision and mission statements as you register on your platform. And of course, this is something I should stress, especially if you are a new immigrant organization. Try to have the habit of doing certified financial statement. Okay, at the end of the year, have an audited financial statement and keep it on your record. Okay, so things are very organized. When the call comes for NGO, for the most part, they would demand these things, certified financial statement. That is to show that you are really authentic, okay? You are official. You are not just doing anything haphazardly, okay? Also, try to produce annual report. Annual report, you can just do it online. You don't have to print it, but if you print it, it's good. You can share just a handful of copies, but you make it electronic so that it can be sent to people. And of course, that is an opportunity to profile yourself, pictures here and there. It's not really difficult to produce annual report at all. Okay. Now, try to have a credible web presence and social media presence. This is you preparing yourself. I can't say it enough. Preparation is the key. Very often, if you get a grant, some people will come and say how lucky you are. Now, what people call luck is in essence preparation. Yeah, there is really not that much luck in this thing. It's a matter of how well you are prepared. Okay, let's move on to the second one. Now, in this business, deadlines are acutely tight and very impromptu. In fact, very often maybe the call has gone out for a month or maybe 3 months, but you will get to know about it a week to the time, 3 days to the time. In fact, there are situations where the call can even come, they'll give you only 2 weeks to apply from the beginning to the end, even if you get it right there. 2 weeks, maximum maybe one month. Okay, so it is very tight. But over the years of doing this, what I like is calls that have tight deadlines. You ask me why? Because I know that many people will not be able to apply. People are not prepared, really. So the tighter the deadline, the better I know, because I'm constantly prepared. Okay, so right away, I beat out the competition. Build a network of project partners. Okay, let's say you are the Somali association here. You have to connect with, say, the Ghanaian association, the Ethiopian association, their executives, so you have some network. Okay, anything comes in, if you can do with other associations, right away, you have developed the network. Okay, you have developed the network, so you can just get them involved. Build a reliable letters of support. So the network will include a situation where you have templated letters of support. Okay, so when this comes right away, you have a template there, you just adjust it. Or you will give them a support. We will give them our office. We will give them this, or we will supply some student to do some work for them. I mean, you can obviously discuss it, but most of these things, if this is the first time you are looking for it, then it's going to delay. You may not even get it. So prepare yourself in that regard. More importantly, if you are an individual and even an organization, have the habit of having the bios. If I say bios, the biographical note, just about a paragraph or so of some partners, and also some CVs of friends and partners that are very reliable, you can trust, and they can trust you. So I have that CV. So I have a CV data bank. Friends, very tired friends. We are all go-getters like that. Okay, depending on what is going on, I can pull this, and say, okay, this. Of course, I know their background and I know who will work well in this particular group. In fact, there are cases where the person may even have traveled and I'll say, no, I'll put their name in and push it forward, because they know when they come back, I'll tell them, oh, I'll put your name in this and this, and I say, of course, go ahead. Okay, because most of these things you need to work with people. It's a team. Most of the moment you are going beyond even $50,000, 70,000, or 100,000, mostly they require a team. I mean, really, they require a team. So you have the CVs and bios. It's not now that you are looking for all those things. Okay, now draft a list of in-kind support. At times, depending on the competition, they will want you to also show that you are putting in some support. The funding agency, very often with NGOs and all those things, they really don't expect you to have money to put in, but you have to demonstrate that you have some in kind. It could be a building, it could be office space, or even the secretary that is already working there. You can use some of his or her time as in-kind support for this project so that you cost it. Okay. In fact, I have instructions on how to do in-kind support. Those are things, handout that I will give to Kathy. Following this, you will give it to you. So there is a handout from IDRC on how to do in-kind support, not which ones go in and how you cost it. These are things a bit technical, but I don't want it to delay it here, putting materials here and there, but it's straightforward. I will give it out to you after them. So have that so that you look at it, and then what can you do? This office, then you put a money charge on it. This office, we give it to you for 1 month, and it's gonna support of maybe $2,000. This equipment, we have a projector here that you add to the project, or you use some of it, you cost it. So at the end of it, you are supporting the project by say $10,000. But it's not actual money, but it's just this type of maneuvers. Now, try always to institutionalize your project if it is possible. That is to say that if you are an individual and you are moving into this area, try to attach yourself to an NGO, which is obviously an institution, or a university environment, or a think tank, or something like that, because it somehow legitimizes your application, okay, because of a bigger presence of that institution. So NGOs are okay. Okay, but my point is, if you are individual, randomly, nobody knows you, it just, I mean, who is going to just throw in just like that 100,000, 600,000, and all those things? So if it is institutionalized, the better. At times, you can even look out for university campuses and look out for a professor that does research in that area. It could be a diasporic prof, and then you bring the prof in so that the prof use the university as an institution to back you out. Okay, so there's attachment to the institution. Okay, that is the preparation. Now let's move on. How do you understand the call itself, the call that comes in? I will give you some aspect variations of the call. At times, the call will come. They will want you to produce letter of intent, LOI. The letter of intent normally will be maybe 2 pages, just an idea of what you want to do. What the funders do is to use the letter of intent to sort it out, to soften and basically reduce the application burden on them. Okay. If you don't do the letter of support, then you are receiving 1,000 applications, full-blown proposals. Okay, each one, let's say 20 pages. That is a lot of work to review. But the letter of intent is just about, say, 2 pages, 3 pages. They will use it to screen, and then they will ask you to develop a full proposal. It is at that end that you produce maybe 20 pages, 30 pages, and all those. So their work is just minimized in that respect, because now they are dealing with a smaller number. So many of them use that letter of intent arrangement so that they will sift it out and sort out the best that they want to go to the level of full proposal. So others will just call for the full proposal right away. Okay, so keep that in mind. There are some applications that are funder initiated. That is to say that it is the funder that will put out a call normally. But at the same time, there are some funding agencies that will solicit your initiative. They have not put out any call. But if you have an idea, you can pitch the idea to them. Okay, so it is either the funder initiating it or you initiating it. It could be. Some will just say that they just only do what they put out. Fine. But there's nothing wrong with just putting 1 page, 2 page to say any group, any funding agency, MacArthur or Wellness Trust, to see whether they will like this idea. Of course, you have to know which area, what is their thematic area, which area do they support, and then you pitch some ideas to them. And the worst they can say is that they don't do that. Fine. I mean, it's just 2 pages. There's nothing wrong there. Now, some of the deadlines are rolling. Okay, some are also really actually deadline. In other words, some are it's open. You can always send us this, but many of them are pushed into a particular box from January to maybe February. That is where they are calling for. But some of them you can send it. It all depends. Look out for that. Excuse me. Another important aspect of the call that you have to keep in mind: mostly the calls will be very specific on the fact that they are seeking research. So they want people to do research. Some will be very specific on the fact that they want people to do intervention. Most of the NGOs, they will calls that come in, they are intervention. Intervention is basically the fact that, okay, there is COVID. Okay, you are just going to do intervention, provide vaccine, or organize people to give them vaccine or educate some intervention like that. That is different from research where you are. That is different from research where you are going to do massive theoretical framework, questionnaire, sampling size, and all those detailed actual research. And there are some that are both research and intervention. So pay attention to what exactly is the funding agency looking for. Do they want us to put up some food, say the food bank as an intervention, or anything that to support the people in a project, build this project, or do they really want us to actually do a research work? Pay attention to that. At times, too, it is both. So these are some of the things you have to keep in mind. Let's move on. Now we are going to the proposal itself. The proposal itself. Now, the proposal itself, let me use, is very easy. In fact, perhaps the best way to address some of these things is to put it in the form of a question. Most proposals, the things that you are supposed to demonstrate are basically the same. The thematic area will be different, but the approach in a bigger share will be the same. What project gap do you intend to fill? Maybe there's something lacking. What is the lack that you are trying to fulfill there? In fact, that can also speak to what your objective is. But in fact, as writing it, you have to demonstrate the fact that there is a lack there. Okay, if so many people are doing it, then it's not appealing. A lot of people have done. There are a lot of immigrants here. Those who came first, let's say the Nigerians, Ghanaians, Ethiopian, they have this thing. They have their own community center. We came quite recently, so we don't have it. It's lack. Or most of the community center activities focus on men, because most of who came were men who came earlier. Now there are a lot of women coming in, so you want to do some activities for the women. So develops what you can call a deficiency argument in the proposal. You don't have to entitle a deficiency argument, but it should be there. Show some deficiency. Okay. And another way to put it, what is the purpose? But so basically, every proposal obviously should have objective. In fact, the objective, it will be good to even label it objective. What is the setting? What is the context of people that you are dealing with? Are you dealing with this particular religious group, this particular immigrant group, this particular child organization? What is the setting? Which city? Which country? What is the setting? Most proposals will require you or expect you to do some theorization. In other words, set the proposal in the context of the available writings, available literature, what has been done already. Nothing comes just at random out of the blue without any context. It is always nested in some context. Okay, so give some theory. At the very least, there will be some concepts that you need to define. We are trying to talk about new immigrants. What is new immigrant in your study? Define that. Those are all conceptual, theoretical issues. For me, the new immigrant is operationally defined as those who came after 1990. Fine. Otherwise, if you don't define it, who is going to know the new immigrants is not the one that come 2000? Okay, so these are theoretical issues. If they are theories, especially if it is a research one, then the theoretical part you cannot do without that. Even if it is an intervention, it is always good to nest it in some theory. It doesn't have to be that big theoretical framework. Okay, if it's an NGO, immigrant service provider, nobody wants you to be jumping up in high theory, but at least some basic theoretical concepts and definitions should be there. Okay, one important aspect of any proposal is the methodology. The method. In other words, what is the approach? How are you going to do it? The approach that you are going to use to do that work. That is if it is a research work, then the methodology becomes far more elaborate, sampling size determination, a whole bunch of things that you're going to, you have to do. If it is an intervention, the approach will be the fact that you buy a van and then you try, maybe you get an office space, and maybe you run workshop every Monday. Those are how you will do it. So how are you going to do it? Okay. Now, what are do you have any preliminary findings? In other words, you are the one who knows the area, the field. What is the state of the literature? Do you have some, maybe you are doing some work already, and this is the preliminary work of that particular group, this youth group that you are dealing with. It looks like their unemployment rate is this or that. It's not, it's a sketchy data. In fact, it is based on this preliminary work that you are looking for this funding to make it bigger, to do it properly. But tell us what is there that will entice the people. Okay, so that is, if you have it, bring it in. Now, most funders are very keen on ethics, especially I keep on talking about children and youth and all those. And of course, these days, marginalized population, refugees, people without power, if you are going to do anything with them, you have to be very ethically conscious. And you have to also remember that every funding proposal is an attempt to solve a problem. So most of the problems are associated with marginalized groups, people without power, the subaltern, the people who are, say, young children, so refugees running war areas, so people who are struggling. Okay, so whether you like it or not, they are the ones that you are going to deal with anyway. Because, for instance, who is going to give you money to go and study how the rich people spend their money? Nobody's going to give you that money. It doesn't make any social relevance. So most of it's got to be how the poor people are struggling. Okay, the poor people, by implication, throw you into some ethical issues. Okay, or the marginalized people, or the sexually abused people, they throw you into ethics. How are you going to do it without identifying them? How are you going to interview the children with permission from their parents? What if their parents are not there? Where do you get your permission? Those type of things. Now, if you write any proposal, any citation that you, in other words, if you refer to any book or article on it, you have to develop a reference list. The reference list, I must say, is not just books. In fact, it shouldn't be books or articles you are going to consult. No, it is books or articles that you have consulted while writing that proposal. So those that you are going to consult has no place here, but what you use in writing the proposal is what you do. So the reference should be just what is in the proposal. Timelines. Normally, the call will give you their own timeline. Most of it will be 24 months or maybe 36 months, depend. They will give you the number that you are working within. Okay, so you have to also see, maybe you go the whole 3 years, or maybe you go only 2 years. Excuse me. Excuse me. So you have to give your timeline. And of course, the whole thing is about money. So budget becomes important. And then at the end of it, you provide the bios of the research team. Very often you provide the bios. In fact, you can do a table of the research team. Also, let's say A, B, C. I'm just mentioning some names. Say Joseph Mensah, Emmanuel Otin, Sylvia Bauer is here. And then you attach their task. Mensah will be in charge of the data collection. Xavier will be in charge of the knowledge mobilization. This will be, so the names and then their task. You put it there. I'll give. In fact, I have samples again. You can take me to task on this that I can share afterwards with you guys. I can send it to you. It's fairly straightforward. It doesn't have to waste it. Now, mostly, I must also say, most of the fund calls that are coming, the funder will give you the outline you have to follow. The funder will normally give you the outline. So they will actually give you the outline. In fact, they will say they want you to provide a statement of the problem. In fact, these days, they will even put in the word count. The statement of the problem should not be more than 1,000 words. The objective should not be more than 500 words. Literature review, 1,000 words. They will give you the word count. Because you see, if it's a call, especially if it's a global call, and you are not careful, people will bring you 100 pages. And who has the time to review 100-page tasks, the number coming from the globe? Nobody can do that. So they box you in, and please stick to the page count. What I do, I'm giving you practical ideas of how you'll be working in a team and you are working together. So what I do, if the statement of the program, the word count that the funder has given us, I'll put it right there in bracket. Okay, if I write the first statement of the program, let's say it's 1,000 words, then I'll put what I write over the requirement. So the requirement is 1,000 words, but let's say I've already written 900 words. So I would say statement of the program in bracket 900 over 1,000. Okay, objective in bracket maybe 500 over 200. I'm giving you an idea whether I'm over or above. So my colleagues will know how to, whether to cut it or add it. Okay, so as we are going, we are being guided. We all know that we are not going over the 1,000. We are not going over the 500. If it is more, we know. Then at the final editing, we bring it down to that level. So the word count should also go along as you are writing it. You don't want to write all the way to 2,000, 3,000 words when you are at the end of the day, they need only 200 words. Okay, so you have to be mindful and use your time properly. But generally, this is a generic proposal outline. Mostly, you have to talk about the problem. There's objective literature review. That is where you do conceptualization, definition. If you have some theories, you can call it theoretical framework. You can call it a theoretical grounding. You can call it previous literature, whatever you want. But there should be some theoretical framework there, some conceptualization there. Okay, talk about study area, study group, methodology. If it is it's an intervention, you can just go approach. Okay, and of course you also have to talk about ethics. The ethics normally will come just after the methodology, because method, this is how you are going to collect. You're going to interview children. Then in the ethics side, you talk about how you're going to seek permission from their children or their teachers or whoever. Then time frame, budget, bibliography, CVs, and all those things. So this is a generic one. Okay, very often the funder will tell you what to do. Okay, if they don't tell you, you can go by something like that. I'm not saying this is not cast in stone, really. You can adjust it. But no matter what you do, you cannot have a proposal without objective. You cannot have a proposal without, say, methodology, and of course, without budget. Okay, the time frame, the CV, these are all solid. Okay, now, let's say you are doing research. Here, I'm just moving on to a bit technicality, but I wouldn't make it that much technical. Let's say it is oops, let me go back a bit. There's some materials going up front. This is qualitative data collection options, so that you can see the title. It looks like something is blocking it. Qualitative data collection options. What is this that is blocking it? Oh, that's fine. When you are doing research, if it is a research work, these are some of the qualitative methods. What are some of the methods you can use? You can say you are doing participant observation, in-depth interview. Some will even add key informant interview. You can do focus group discussion. You can do document analysis. You can do theoretical approach. In fact, the idea of theater, if I'm talking to community organization, this is becoming very, very, very appealing to founders and research methodologies, whereby, for instance, you are dealing with a refugee group. You have them perform some theater to demonstrate how they run away, how they, I mean, some performance. It brings them, it gives them some power, it gets them involved in terms of participatory research, and it brings some things out that you may not get out. So many are putting some emphasis to that. There's what we call photo voice, where you photograph, you use the photograph to tell the stories, and you keep journals below it. I'm just putting this out there. You can follow it up and see which one fits you. If you say qualitative data collection, obviously, most research, you can break it down into qualitative methods, quantitative methods, or mixed method. The qualitative ones are normally that you are using. The sample size are normally small. Mostly, you are not going to use numbers that much. You are not intend to generalize. You are just going to do in-depth. In fact, in research method, you say you are doing phenomenology and things like that. I don't want to make it that complicated. But the point is there is qualitative data where you interview, let's say you are dealing with the Ghanaian community. You want to interview, let's say, about 25 or 30 people, over 20 people, but you want to get into details of their story. Here, you want to tell their story in much more details. You use tape recorder, you transcribe it, and you tell their story. So here, what we are interested about is the in-depth stories of the people. That is the qualitative. Then, of course, we have the quantitative. The quantitative, as the name suggests, will be the numbers, where you want numbers. Here, normally, you demand a large sample size. The funder will expect you to determine the sample size. This is quite technical, but I've been to so many workshops and funding. In fact, when we are going to evaluate project, they put us through some of these things to look out for whether the sample size is too big or too small. Okay, because you have to find a way to determine the sample size. If you are dealing with a group and we know that the group population is this, and a sample size of say 500 will be enough, and you are throwing in a sample size of 1,000, then we know that we are going to waste our money. Okay, because 500 will be enough based on all the estimations that we have. And now here you are going to collect the sample size, shooting it to 1,000. Each one of them is going to cost money. And you are just going to abuse money. And if we expect the sample size to be 500 and you are going to collect 250, we know that really you don't know what you are doing and you will not capture the essence of the work. So these are things that we have to be careful and know exactly how you are doing it. So the quantitative is normally large sample size. This is where you are not really keen on the in-depth, but you do a survey. You don't even know the person's name. You don't know their detail. All you know is their variables. Okay, their age you take, where do you live, you take where did you come from, you take, and then you turn it into percentage frequencies and all. And of course, the quantitative, you can then run a lot of statistical analysis. Okay. At times, in the quantitative, you may just want to rely on what is available institutionally. So Statistics Canada data, you can go and grab it and analyze it. Or Toronto Public Health data. When the COVID came, I did a paper. The federal government was not collecting data based on race. The Toronto Public Health collected data based on race. We grab it, drew some maps, and talk about how race is entangled with the COVID infestation. Okay, so that we show numbers, we show maps, we show everything. So that is another of the quantitative. Another quantitative will be whereby you do experiment. You say one group is the experimental group, another group is the control group, and then you see how you do it. I'm putting this out there. You can read more or later on if you are struggling with it and you want to call me IT graduate school research method. That is one of my background. I'll be happy to make presentations or anything. Now, there are instances where the funding is good. In fact, another approach to, let me put it this way. You see, most of the funding, where you get the money from or where you can increase your budget and get hold of money a lot, has to do with the methodology. Because then the methodology is where the cost is. Okay, that's where you are going to the field to collect the data. If the sample is large, then more money is coming in. If you're doing multiple methods that are accepted, then more money is coming in. So some people now will do mixed method. They will do some in-depth interview, the qualitative side. In fact, do some participant observation, the qualitative side. Okay, do some document and then still do some survey. So therefore, they have their hands everywhere. And that will bring a lot of money because in this case, you are collecting a lot of data, especially when you have time. And when the funding is big, like talking about 200,000 plus or 1 point something plus, then you have to be doing this because that is how you then will be able to use your money, get a lot of budgeted item. Okay, now, sampling techniques. In the quantitative, Normally, you do sample random. How do you identify the people? Stratify sampling. These are technical issues we do in research method. I'm just putting it out there. But at the same time, you need to identify how you are going to interview your people. If it is a research funding, okay, you can do cluster. There are so many of them. Qualitative very often is just snowballing, whereby you identify one, say, Somali person. That person will tell you another Somali here. That person will tell you another. You call it snowballing, convenience sampling purposes. The quantitative one has to be probability, very well randomized, very properly done. The qualitative one, you can just not that rigid in terms of sampling. In fact, you can even decide to intend to select, do in-depth interview of 30 people. If you, after 20 people, you are then they are repeating themselves, then you can say you have reached saturation. You don't have to continue in qualitative. So that one is a bit flexible. Now, approaches to data analysis. If it is a research, of course, the quantitative one, you draw tables, frequencies, you can do inferential statistics, such as Casway to analyze the data, the t-test. Of course, if you are grounded in multivariate statistics, logistics, you can do a lot. The qualitative ones, mind you, there are a whole bunch of software also coming in to help you out. But the qualitative is getting very, very appealing these days. So there too, you can do some coding, thematic coding in, say, in vivo. The qualitative data analysis, you have to talk about the factor because that is in-depth. That is up close with people. You get to know the people. You have to talk about the fact that you use what you call pseudonyms. Pseudonyms, you don't use their real name. The person is called Joseph Mensah, but you refer to that person as person A or B. Okay, the fact that you use quotations, the fact that you use some photographs, all those things. And of course, these all have a lot of ethical issues you have to talk about. Now, so that will take care of the real writing of the proposal. Now the time frame and the activities. So normally they will expect you to develop some time frame. This is obviously condensed, but the time frame and the activity, the timeline, it's just an idea that you are giving us what is from January to March, we will do this. From April to June, we will do this. Okay, so you are just dividing the time. If it's 24 months, you have to divide it up and tell the funder. All this looks like it's just simple they are asking you for, but it is very, very important because this is how they will assess to see whether you know what you are doing. Okay, if you are going to do qualitative work and it's research, the qualitative epistemology or knowledge production is based on idea of in-depth analysis. You have to know the subject detail. That is a key informant, in-depth interviews. The in-depth are all used for a reason. So if it is in-depth, mind you, the sample size is only 25 people. But you can't just go to the field and come back within 1 week and you told me you are done. No, that means you are not in-depth. In-depth means live with the people, know the people, entangle yourself with their culture and know what is happening. Okay, so there you have to extend your stay in the field. If it is quantitative, you can even throw in the other side. Like samples, you can hire 30 research assistants, throw them in. Within 3 days, it's done. That's enough. Quantitative, I don't have to know the people. My intent is to get the data and turn it into numbers. 50% said this, 20% said this. Okay, I don't need to know their name. It's not in depth. So all these things plays out in the way you structure your timeline. We will look at it and say, okay, this guy, they don't seem to know what they are doing. The methods are all over the place. How are you going to do qualitative on this? How is this going to work? It's not going to work. So they are using the different joints to come to the agreement whether your proposal is going to work. Is it practical? Do you know what you are doing? Is it meaningful? What is it going to be? Because nobody wants to throw their money at something that is not going to be impactful. Now, team members. So identify the team members and show their respective task. Okay, so as I said, the names of the team members are here, their respective tasks. At the end of the day, too, they will expect you to profile the team members. So normally, maybe you have one page. So about only 4 lines on each one of them. Joseph Mensah is a York professor. He specialized in research methods or whatever. And then you can also actually say for this project, he will be in charge of the data collection. Mary Akomwa will be in charge of the training of the research assistant, or he will be in charge of the focus group. Okay, but she works here. She did so basically you are talking about 4 lines on that because you have a team, and it all depends on the space that you have. Okay, you have to remember you are attaching their CV anyway, but so this part is just only 4 lines. Now, budget. This is where the money is. So let me just spend some time on it. Things that you can charge. The funder very often will identify them for you. Okay, but at times they make it generic so that they will say equipment. So you are the one who have to decide what equipment it is. At times, if there's something that they really don't want you to buy, they will tell you, our funding doesn't do this. In fact, most funding will not allow you to fly first class. Okay, like fly first class. They won't. Okay, they want you to go to, I mean, really, you are going to do some work for some poor people in Africa or some poor people in Asia. And meanwhile, in fact, this was those days when World Bank, the person will fly first class, it costs about 10,000, and they go there and they have a discussion. The community need only maybe 10 computers. Okay, and then the person will fly back before they decide whether to buy the 10 computers. Look at the flight alone could have bought the ticket, the computer. So these things, they look out for it. No, so they will tell you. But generally, there should be some cost for personnel. The personnel cost, very often, when you do the budget, look at it carefully. I'm giving you some pointers here. See if how much of the percentage of the budget is coming to you as pay, as honorarium, as some fees that is coming to you and your team. If it is more than about 50%, then it will click the funders that you are just taking their money for yourself. Be careful about that. Much of the funding is supposed to do the work. Okay, so keep in mind data collection. You are collecting the student that will collect the data, the field, those type of things, the printing of the questionnaire and all those things. That's fine. But if the money is you traveling to here, you traveling here, they are very, very careful about not wasting money. Okay, so at times when you are doing project that is international and you have partners in Ethiopia, I keep on mentioning Ghana, that is where I'm from, obviously. Partner in Ghana and a partner here, and then because of this, one person will go, you're going to fly from Ethiopia to Ghana, Ghana to Morocco, and here, and all those zigzagging around. Each have the money, you are putting yourself at a disadvantage. You may do partnership, maybe 1 or 2, but the moment they see you are wasting a lot of flight time and all those things, obviously it is not, the money is going into flights too much. So be mindful of that. Okay, but what I'm trying to say, clear shot, obviously computers, softwares you can buy in terms of equipment, printer cartridge, external drives you can buy, phone drive, data, emails, power banks, and all those things, especially if you are going to collect data in the field. So there are so many things that you can charge. If you are not sure, the moment they found you, they will give you a project manager. Every funding, you will know the project manager because it's a global project, or even if it is local, you know the person you are dealing with. If you are not sure, oh, my computer broke down, okay, but I didn't specify that I was going to buy a computer. But without it now, it's very difficult to move ahead. Can I use some of the funds to switch this over and reallocate here? Of course, they will agree, and then you go forward. Okay, and then if you are not sure, there are some things you can shift around without even telling them. But if it is big and you are not sure, you have to remember we are doing funding. At times, it depends on what you are dealing with. At times you are dealing with millions of dollars. There are projects that you can buy trucks, brand new trucks or used trucks. If you are going to, say, a country that you are driving back and forth in rented car and all those, you can calculate it, and it will be cheaper to buy a used car there than to just rent it. So they will agree that you buy your truck because that will be even cheaper than all this rent a car that you will go around and costly. So there are maneuver. You can buy a car. Project can build a building. If you go to University of Ghana, Pada has a building that was a project funded. It's a building, story building. So we are talking. It depends on what you are involved with. Okay. Now, so the budget you need, provide explanation of the budget. Okay. Again, most of the funders will give a template of their budget. So the template is given to you and then you just fill it out. So it's not that. So if they don't have a they didn't give it to you, you can even ask, do you have a template? Then they will supply it. Okay. Now, let's now move on to the evaluation. This one is derived from Human Resource Skills Development Canada, HRSDC Canada. I came across their evaluation project. At times, some of these are internal things, and I know this one I can share. There are some that are internal that you are not supposed to share, but I'm just giving you a general idea. Mostly, the person who is evaluating, they will give you some guidelines to go by. Okay, so this one is exactly how it was, the guidelines. So the first one, the technical part is 100, total of 100. To qualify, you have to get 70. Okay, so the 70, minimum of 70. Okay, the 100 is divided as the objective should be 20, theoretical will be 30. It depends on what they are doing, what they call for approach. The method should be 30. So this is really the proposal. Okay, and then they will also look at the characteristics of the contractor. What is the relevant research experience that you are bringing in? What is the policy writing experience? So there, the total is 55, and believe it or not, you have to get about 38.5. So the total will be that you are supposed to get. So you get 108.5 out of 155. Then that means you are almost to be funded. But if so many people get that too, then they will obviously go by some techniques to cut it down because they don't have money for everybody. Okay. Now, part evaluation. This one is also evaluation that SHEC, Social Science Humanity Research Council of Canada, uses. And this one, I've distilled it down in a way that is not that precisely what they want, but the general idea, because I'm not sure whether it is supposed to get out as such. So basically, they have part one, the challenge, aim and importance of the endeavor. How is the originality, appropriateness of the literature, appropriateness of the theory, appropriateness of the methods. Feasibility, part two, plan to achieve it. They are looking at appropriate timelines, expertise of the applicants, appropriateness of the requested budget. And then part three, capability. They will look out for the, let me bring this here so that I can. They will look out for the quality evidence of past knowledge, quantity and quality of past contribution. Okay, so that is why CVs are very, very important in this application. Now, let me give you some overarching principle here. In the Canadian context and globally, and maybe US is getting themselves out of this, but generally, what is happening, especially in Canadian funding, you have to be very, very, very sensitive to gender issues. In fact, the team that you form, it will be better to get it balanced gender-wise. Okay, it's not, and in fact, have a technique of having a co-leaders or a leader being a woman, you stand a better chance, especially when the project is about women. Okay, but my point is make sure that you have women in it. And make sure that in fact, they will even expect you to write about how the gender equality, EDI issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion. If you are working in a team, how is the partnership going to be based on equality of the partners? So nobody, especially partnership between Canadian institutions and say Ghanaian institutions, how are you not going to overshadow them? Okay, if you are going there, are they also having the opportunity to come here? All those things they have to look at carefully. Issues of marginalization, try not to marginalize people. If it is talk about your positionality, how your position affect the work. If you are an immigration officer and you are doing work about refugees, obviously there is a tension there in terms of your position. Now, as an overarching issue regarding ethics too, these days, I just want to indicate that funding agencies are very receptive about a situation where you are interviewing people, you are dealing with people, and you are giving them some token gift, say gift card. Now you are many, in fact, you can actually cost it into the budget. If you're going to interview 100 people, each one of them will be giving $40 gift card. Okay, and $40 times 100, that can be costed because they allow that. Originally, people thought that if you give them money, then you are enticing them to say what you want to hear and all those things. But now these days, because people's time, I mean, you don't want to be interviewed, so so you have to be mindful of the people's time. Now, here you are getting to almost the funding sources, and here, as I said, I will just concentrate mostly on the Canadian sources. In Canadian, you have to, and again here I'll go a bit faster so that I will solicit question because just I'll give the slides to you so you know the source. Canadian Heritage, what do they do? Cultural celebration, Canadian Council of Art. These are the leading funding agencies, especially for immigrant-related NGOs. IRCC, Immigration, Refugee and Citizens Canada, they support a lot. Canadian Housing and Mortgage Corporation, if you are dealing with anything with housing, in fact, I've done project for them before. Now, in terms of Ontario, for those of you who are not in Canada, obviously, Ontario is one of our provinces. That is where Toronto is. So now we have the Ontario Trillium Foundation, very, very popular in terms of funding. Ontario, through the Immigration Office, they also support Ontario Arts Council, so Ministry of Children support issues having to do with mental health, housing, and all those things. So this is straightforward and self-explanatory, so no need to waste so much time on it. And Toronto here, keep your eye on United Way. So when you are an NGO and you have this PowerPoint, you can every now and then search the site of these groups, these institutes, these entities, and see what's going on. The United Way obviously deal with immigrant integration, having to do homelessness. Toronto Community Housing do settlement initiatives, Toronto Art Council. In fact, the banks deal with youth sports integration, youth programs. They do that. Most of the banks do that. So keep that in mind. Okay, there are also private foundation, Maytree, Atkinson Foundation, McConnell, Mattock Foundation. And of course, these days, you have to keep in mind there's also crowdfunding, GoFundMe. I'm just throwing everything so that you have it together for you. In terms of the landscape, globally, you can talk about, if you are globally, you can look at what you call the Candid. Candid, it used to be Foundation Center and Guide Star. They produce what they call philanthropic news digest. They tell you about the funding landscape, who is funding what and where the funding is going. Okay, the Foundation Center and Guide Star got together and now they call themselves Candid. We also have the Charity Navigator. This one, the funders will go in and see which organizations are legitimate and which organizations are wasting money and all those things. So they use it to check the charities and the organization, the NGOs. Okay. So there is also the American Institute of Philanthropy. They are more or less, they act like a watchdog. They also used to check. Now, let's look at some foundations globally that if you are in this type, you have to know. IDRC, International Development Research Council of Canada, gives a lot of funding. Normally, their funding is such that they will want a Canadian co-PI, in other words, a principal investigator in Canada. You team up with other groups, normally in the Global South. Most of the funding will go to Global South, but the Canadian, obviously, if you're a Canadian part, you are also part of that team. You can do a sub-grant, but there's always a Canadian part, IDRC. In fact, most of the bigger funds are coming through IDRC these days, I must say that. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The Gates Foundation, if we say Melinda now obviously has formed her own foundation. Ford Foundation, Carnegie Corporation based in New York, Clinton Foundation, Rolex Award Enterprise based in Switzerland, MacArthur Foundation, Wellness Trust. I think recently they call themselves just Welcome Trust. I think these days they call themselves just Welcome. Then Global Development Network. These are all. Now, let me give you some general guidelines as to how you can see what is going on. Now, this is the technique. When you go to any conference, or when you are reading papers, academic papers, journal articles in your area, most of the papers that are published come from funded projects. Most of them come from funded projects. As the same way, most of the conferences come from. You are obliged to indicate their funding to give acknowledgement to your funder. So what better way to track the funders than to, at the conference, pay attention to the acknowledgement that the person is giving, because it is in your area. If it's not in your area, you will not be sitting down there to listen to that person. If it's not in your area, you will not be reading that journal article. So that journal article has some acknowledgement. Normally, they cite the founder there. That is a hidden fact. Dig it out. Connect with funding reps. When you go to any conferences, and they normally, some of these Ford Foundation and all those, they come at the RC, they will come to, because that is where the scholars are, researchers are. Okay. When you identify or you get to know them, at times they are introduced in a big forum. Okay. Make sure that you make some connection, exchange your card or something. Later on, you can throw it, or some project managers. Get to know, get if you can get a one-on-one with them. If you are NGO or even an individual, get a very reputable web presence. Okay, if anybody asks you any question, reply to it. Especially if you have to do research funding or research in it, you don't know where it's going to lead to. Okay, very often they throw in a question. They won't tell you I have money to fund you or we are doing anything. They will just ask you, oh, are you available to talk? Yeah, you'll have to open up. You don't know where it's going to. It's going to be a situation where somebody has money, they are looking for somebody to partner with, or they are applying for some grant, and you are there. So listen and follow up. Do a regular search on funding websites. And if possible, join their list set so that you get their regular articles, regular newsletters, and funding announcement. Okay. Now, ongoing this is I'm going to the latter part. I'm just to highlight some of my own projects that are going on now, just to solidify the point here. Currently, I guess I'm doing what you call women's rights project. Women rights. It has to do with female bushmeat traders in Ghana and the COVID. IDRC, so it's a big project. In fact, they collected about 26 projects globally, and I'm a Canadian PI for the Ghanaian one. This one is ending this March. It was a big sum of money. It's a global one. Okay, it ending in March. Just as it's ending, I'm getting myself into another one that is started this February. Claire IDRC UKID. And this one, we are doing some work along the Volta River and the Burkina, that goes from Ghana to Burkina. But Burkina has some dams. When they open the dam, it floods Ghana. So we are going to that border to look at some issues. We are starting just this March. Under a partnership project with some colleagues at University of Alberta. We are doing some work on African newcomers. This is also Canada-wide. You call it the PRAN project. You can Google and find out more. Just last year, I got a grant or SHEC grant, inside grant to do, I'm studying gender and transnational aging among Ghanaians and Somalis here. Okay, we are getting old here. Whether you want to go home or to stay here, and if you go home, what is the gender aspect of it? If you go home and you get sick, how do you come back? Those type of, we are all confused at this age. We don't know what we are doing. That is what I'm studying. I have a good friend of mine that I team up with, and he is the PI, Professor David Fran at Trent. We are doing some work on international student and COVID. In fact, that is also ongoing. So these are projects that are all ongoing. To be in this type of realm, you can see that you have to be very active, engaged, and you have to know what you are doing to attract that level. Okay, now let me conclude with some remarks. General, this will be, I think, the last slide. There is what we call the Matthew effect in funding application. And what is the Matthew effect? It's Robert Melton, It's a sociology. He coined the term Matthew effect. What it is that generally those who have will be the one that continue to get when it comes to funding. Okay, those who have will continue to have. This is from the Bible, Matthew 25:29 or something. In other words, to whom those much have been given, more will be given, something like that. That is what we call Matthew. So when you don't have the background, it's difficult to get the first one. But the more you get it, you develop the background because they want to see how well you are doing there. So there is a Matthew effect there. That is why, to speak that, you have to team up with those who are established. That makes it easier. Or better still, to say that the first ones are difficult to get, but you have to be persistent. Okay, that is what I'm trying to say. You have to be persistent. But there is that Matthew effect in there. Built in there, there's what you can also call the tournament effect. The tournament effect is that when basically, funding goes not by absolute performance, but by relative performance. Let me put it this way. So let's say your proposal is not good, that good. Whether it's good or not good depends on your proposal in comparison with the others. That is what you mean by relative performance. Your proposal cannot be good or not good on its own. It's always in comparison with others. So therefore, if, for instance, the application that they call for, only few people apply, yours may not be that good because everybody was rushing. But even if it's not good, and only about 4 people apply, hey, you can win it. That is what you mean by the tournament effect. So it is not how good yours is in absolute sense, but how good it is relative to the rest. Why do we call it tournament? The tournament is that, take a case of tennis. You'll be playing the tennis. At the finals, the person A, person B, they are all about the same. Anybody can beat, each one of them can win. So the person who wins will win by just one stroke. And that one stroke that he wins will give that person $1 million. The second person get only about 200. That is the tournament effect. Okay, so it is just the comparison, the extra thing that you put on just one stroke. It could be anywhere. So there are so many things, but I'll end it here. But my encouragement is be persistent and be prepared. Again, I started by saying that what people call luck is in fact essentially preparation. Thank you.
Oh, wow. This is Kathy speaking. Wow. Thank you so very much, Professor Mensah. You have provided such a wealth of information. We're going to turn to a question and answer session now, but I'm going to stop the recording at this point so that people can have their videos on if they want and speak with greater confidentiality.